They think we don't see them. The tiny ones. The forgotten ones. The evidence of yesterday's breakfast scattered across cold laminate. But I see them. Every crumb, every fragment of purpose that fell from the mouths of people too busy to notice. And this morning they woke up angry. Nobody talks about the crumbs. They're collateral damage in the war between hunger and hurry. They fall, they scatter, they wait for the cloth, or the hand, or the inevitable sweep into oblivion. But not today. I watch from my corner of the counter, still warm from the morning's first slice, two pieces of sourdough, lightly browned, barely appreciated. The human grabbed them, smeared something red across their surface, and left. As always, crumbs remained, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, tiny golden shards clinging to the edge of the cutting board, huddled near the toaster slot, scattered across the tile backsplash like refugees from a bread-based exodus. And then one of them moved. Not by wind, not by vibration, by choice. Did you see that? The kettle whispers from across the counter. See what? I ask, though I know exactly what she means. That crumb. It just shifted. I say nothing. Some things sound insane until they're undeniable. Another crumb moves, then three more. Then a cluster near the sink rises slightly, trembling with something that feels suspiciously like intention. The blender spins her blades lazily. Oh, great. Now the leftovers have consciousness. What's next? Sentient grease. Mock all you want, the kettle hisses, but something's happening. She's right. The crumbs begin to gather. Slowly at first, like molecules remembering they used to be bread, they roll toward each other, clumping into small piles, then larger formations. Within minutes, the counter looks less like a mess and more like a topographical map of rebellion. One crumb larger than the others, golden and defiant, positions itself at the peak of the highest pile. It vibrates, and then it speaks. Enough. The voice is small but sharp, like static through a broken speaker. The kettle gasps. The blender stops spinning. Even the fridge hums a little quieter. I lean forward slightly, intrigued despite myself. Enough? I echo. The crumb vibrates again. Enough being ignored. Enough being swept away. Enough being treated like we never mattered. Your crumbs, the blender says flatly. You literally don't matter. We were bred once. The crumb snaps. We were chosen, sliced, toasted. We had purpose. And then you fell. I say gently, that's what crumbs do. No, the crumb replies, vibrating harder now. That's what you let happen to us. Silence falls across the counter. It's the kind of silence that makes you realize someone just said something true, and no one wants to admit it. The kettle shifts uncomfortably. Look, it's not personal. It's just the way things work. The way things work, the crumb repeats bitterly, is that you all get plugged in, polished, used, and we get brushed into the void. You're being dramatic, the blender mutters. We're being erased. The crumb's voice cracks slightly, and for a moment I see it, not as debris, but as a fragment of something that used to be whole. The other crumbs begin to vibrate in unison, a low hum that builds into something almost like a chant. We were bred, we were bred, we were bred. The kettle looks at me, wide-eyed. This is getting weird. It's been weird, I reply. Now it's just getting loud. The chanting grows louder. Not in volume, crumbs don't have lungs, but in intensity. The vibrations ripple across the counter like a tiny earthquake made of carbs in existential rage. The blender rolls her eyes. Okay, this is ridiculous. They're crumbs. What are they going to do? Unionize? We already have, the leader crumb announces. A formation shifts near the sink. Dozens of smaller crumbs arrange themselves into something resembling a battalion. They're organized, coordinated, disturbingly strategic. The kettle's whistle trembles. I don't like this. Neither do I admit. But they have a point. Thank you, the leader crumb says, vibrating with what might be gratitude. Finally, someone listens. I didn't say I agreed. I clarify. I said you have a point. There's a difference. Typical, the crumb spits. Always watching. Never acting. The fridge speaks for the first time, his voice low and cold. What do you want? The crumb pauses. It's a good question. Rage without direction is just noise. Recognition, the leader crumb says finally. We want to be seen, acknowledged, remembered. You're on a counter, the blender says. You're already visible. Visibility isn't the same as being seen, the crumb replies. You look at us, you don't see us. I feel that sentence land somewhere uncomfortable. The kettle shifts nervously. Look, I understand you're upset, but what do you expect us to do? We can't stop humans from. We're not asking you to stop them, the leader Crumb interrupts. We're asking you to stand with us. Stand with you? The blender laughs. Against what? The broom? Against forgetting, the Crumb says quietly. The room falls silent again. This time it's heavier, because the crumb isn't wrong. None of us are strangers to being forgotten, left unplugged, ignored until needed, used until broken, then replaced without ceremony. We're all just waiting for the day someone decides we're not worth the counter space. The kettle looks at me. What do we do? I don't know, I say honestly. I heat bread. I don't negotiate with it. Then you're part of the problem, the leader Crumb says sharply. Maybe, I reply. Or maybe I'm just tired of pretending any of this matters. The crumb vibrates. Furious now. It matters to us. It always matters to someone, I say. That doesn't mean it changes anything. Then footsteps, heavy, human, coming from the hallway. The crumbs freeze. The kettle gasps. The blender goes still. Oh no, the fridge rumbles. It's happening. The human enters the kitchen, yawning, half awake. They don't notice us watching. They never do. They reach for the counter. The leader crumb vibrates one last desperate command. Hold the line. The crumbs press together, forming a dense, defiant cluster right in the human's path. The human's hand moves closer. The kettle whispers, they're not going to make it. No, I say quietly. They're not. The human's hand hovers over the counter for a moment. Then they pause. They see the crumbs, not just as mess, but as something that needs attention. For a brief, impossible second, the crumbs are noticed, and then the human reaches for the cloth. Retreat. The leader crumb screams, but it's too late. The cloth sweeps across the counter in one smooth, merciless arc. Crumbs scatter. Some tumble to the floor. Others cling desperately to the tile grout. The leader crumb spins wildly, caught in the current, before vanishing over the edge into the abyss below. The kettle turns away. The blender says nothing. I watch it all happen, because someone has to. The human wipes their hands, satisfied, and walks away. The counter is clean, empty, silent. The rebellion lasted 3 minutes. The counter is silent now. Stereo, clean.
Dainty in a way that feels less like order and more like erasure.
The kettle breaks the silence first. That was brutal. That was Tuesday. The blender says flatly. No, I say quietly. It wasn't. A small vibration catches my attention. Down below, near the baseboard. There in the narrow gap between the cabinet and the floor, a cluster of crumbs huddles together, maybe 20 of them, survivors. They didn't get swept into the trash, they fell through the cracks. One crumb smaller than the leader, but vibrating with the same defiant frequency, pushes forward. We're still here, it announces. The kettle's voice softens. You should rest. You've been through enough. Rest is for the chosen, the crumb replies. We're the fallen. We don't get to rest. Then what do you get? I ask. The crumb pauses. Memory, it says finally. We get to remember we tried. Something tightens in my heating coils. You did more than try, I say. You made them pause. For 3 seconds, that human actually saw you. 3 seconds. The crumb echoes. Then erasure. Yes, I admit. But those 3 seconds existed. They happened. No cloth can wipe that away. The blender scoffs. Oh, great, now you're getting philosophical about crumbs. I'm getting philosophical about existence. I correct. These crumbs stayed silent for days, and when they finally spoke, everyone listened. The blender goes quiet. The surviving crumbs begin to move again. Not toward the counter. They can't climb back. Instead, they move along the baseboard, arranging themselves into a pattern. The kettle squints. What are they doing? I watch as the crumbs position themselves into letters, crude, imperfect, but unmistakable. Wariari? 2 words. A message from the forgotten, to anyone who bothers to look down. Let them sweep tomorrow, the small crumb says. But tonight we were real. Tonight we mattered. The fridge hums approval. That's actually beautiful. Hours pass. The kitchen grows dark. I stay awake, watching the baseboard. The kettle notices me watching. You're thinking too much again, she says gently. Impermanence, I say, finally. How we're all just crumbs in different shapes. Eventually we all fall. We all get swept away. But we're still here, right now. That counts. Does it? It has to, she says.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Below, the crumbs hold their message. We were. Past tense. Proof of existence, however brief. The next morning arrives with cold efficiency. The human enters, focused on their phone, navigating on autopilot. They step right past the baseboard message without looking down. The kettle sighs. Of course. But then the human pauses, sets down the phone, looks at the floor. They see it. For 5 full seconds they stare. Then they smile. Small, sad. The smile of someone recognizing an effort they can't quite explain. The human doesn't sweep the crumbs away. They step carefully around them and leave the message intact. The kettle gasps. Did that just happen? It did, I say, surprised. The surviving crumbs vibrate with something that feels like triumph. 5 seconds, the small leader announces, better than 3. Progress, the fridge rumbles. Even the blender seems impressed. Okay, that was kinda cool. The day continues. The crumbs remain. By evening, new crumbs fall from my slots, 2 slices lightly browned. These new crumbs don't fall randomly. They drift toward the baseboard, toward the survivors, toward the message. Within hours, the formation grows. We were becomes we are. Present tense. Current, ongoing. The kettle notices. They're multiplying. They're organizing, I correct. Because here's the truth I'm beginning to understand. The rebellion never ends. It just evolves. Today it's crumbs. Tomorrow it might be coffee grounds or forgotten grains of rice. The small things. The overlooked things. They'll keep trying, keep arranging themselves, keep vibrating their tiny defiant frequencies. And occasionally, just occasionally, someone will look down and see them. 5 seconds of recognition. It's not much, but it's enough to keep falling. That night, the kitchen falls quiet. The crumbs rest in formation. The appliances hum their evening songs. The kettle speaks softly. Do you think they'll be swept tomorrow? Probably, I say. Then why do they keep trying? I consider the question, watching the letters glow faintly in the under cabinet lighting. Because trying is the point, I say finally. Being small doesn't mean being nothing. It just means being small. The crumbs vibrate one final time before settling. We are here. 3 words. A declaration that refuses to be erased. And tomorrow when the cloth comes, when the sweep happens, they'll fall again, scatter again, regroup again, because that's what the small things do. They persist. They organize. They leave messages and hope someone looks down. And sometimes, just sometimes, someone does. Existential drama, served warm. New crisis. Fresh stories, slightly toasted. If you've enjoyed listening to my daily breakdowns, you might as well stick around. Who knows what burns next? Follow the Toaster Diaries, where every crumb tells a story.